Today's topic is going to be why I want you to stop calling the stage your office. And it's something that's bothered me for a long time. And then recent things have happened that's even like driving me even more crazy. Okay, so Primus is looking for a new drummer, and they put out on their Facebook page that they're accepting submissions from anybody. Now, I've been part of these before. I call it the cattle call, and they just put out a blanket thing, and then they get who knows how many people will send in their bios and their websites and their YouTube links. And part of these cattle calls where a band will put out there and, say, oh, we're going to take auditions or submissions and whatever, and they get a whole bunch of people excited. But it ends up kind of being a public relations stunt, a PR stunt, if you will. But then again, you never know. So, yes, I submitted my information. And I will say, on a side note, when a band asks you for something where they are possibly going to look at options, give them exactly what they're asking for. Don't give them more than what they're asking for. Give them exactly what they're asking for, which is what I did. We'll see. I think this is another thing where I'm probably going to be age appropriate for a band like Primus. And as a drummer, who wouldn't want to play with Les Claypool? That could be pretty cool. So, yes, thank you to those who tagged me and suggested that I do that. And we'll see. I did my part, and now that's the big thing. As long as you're always doing your part to try to forget about and not worry about the outcomes. And my name has been brought up more and more in conversation in recent months and in recent years as a possibility to tour with a well-known international band, and this is another one of those occasions. So hopefully something's going to click eventually. All right, let's get into today's subject. So I think I have a few things that tie in with that. I finished reading this book, and I posted about that. My Effin' Life by Geddy Lee. Geddy Lee, if you don't know, the drummer. I got drums on the brain. The bass player for the band Rush. There's a couple things in here that I think are going to be directly related today today's subject. So I'll have that ready to talk about here in a moment. And a really great quote from Todd Zuckerman as well. Greg says, I did that silly Limp Bizkit guitar cattle call audition that they held at Guitar Center in 2002 or 3. Monumental waste of day, but it was fun. I've been a part of those too, only just online. And it's funny because when people ask, like, who could you play for, or who would I want to play for? So I guess I'm taking a step back for a second before we get into today's discussion. There's so many that I would love to play for. I've mentioned Tesla so many times. That would be great. I really like Adele's music, so I would be totally into playing drums for Adele or Pink, or somebody said, what about Taylor Swift? Yeah, sure. I'd play drums for Taylor Swift. Who wouldn't want to be part of one of the largest touring things ever? Yeah. One of my students asked me yesterday, like, who's my favorite front man? And I said, well, I don't know what he would be like to be around off stage, but I would love to sit and play drums while Sebastian Bach is fronting the band. I think he is one of my favorite frontmen ever, and I think it would just be such a blast to play drums for Sebastian Bach. That would be really, really great. And artists like him are out there, and they are looking for people like me to drum. So unless you're Dream Theater or Tool or something crazy like that, I think I have enough ability to be able to play with just about anybody. It's just waiting for that, not waiting, but just looking for that opportunity to come along and make a go of it. That would be awesome. So I think Primus is one of those where I'm age appropriate. I can play those songs. I already know several other songs, and man, it'd be a blast. So I posted about a week and a half ago uh, a picture of an office, an actual office, with a desk and a chair and piles of paper and a laptop on the desk. And I said, "This is an office." And then the next picture, I posted a picture of Midline on stage opening up for Volbeat in an arena. And I said, "This is not the office." And I've had very strong feelings about that for a long, long, long time. And people have posted this picture of their drums on Facebook or whatever. Here I am at my office tonight. And that just always rubbed me the wrong way. And here's why. I started playing drums when I was 10 years old and fell in love with drumming. And I didn't know where drumming was going to take me other than I just fell in love with it. I wouldn't stop playing. And as the years went by and I got into high school and I started trying to form my own bands, it was just so, I don't know, there was some kind of major release of endorphins or what have you, and playing music with other people was so special to me and something I really worked diligently and hard to be able to do and to do well. And I took drum lessons all through junior high and high school, and I was involved with band at school, and my high school band teacher was just a phenomenal guy to have as a teacher, and he was very encouraging. So it was like all of this stuff, and I was relentless in my own practice and trying to develop these skills, still not knowing where they led. But as I was getting near the end of high school, it's natural for people to start quizzing you on what you're going to do with your life. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? What's your fallback plan? What's your plan B? Things of that nature. Are you going to college? So these questions would keep coming up over and over and over again, and I just never looked at it as an option for me to go to college or some trade school, things of that nature. I was really driven to play the drums. And so when it came to working somewhere, I thought, wow, what's an easy job I could get? I didn't want to work at McDonald's. I didn't want to work in fast food. I had a handful of friends that worked at a movie theater, the Cineplex Odeon in Nampa, and so I got a job there working for $3.85 an hour. I think. Pretty sure that's what it was. But at any rate, it was fun working at the movie theater, and I kind of worked my way up the ladder pretty fast for a kid right out of high school working a job. And it was something I enjoyed doing. And, it was part of the entertainment business in a way. Sorry, my leg is freaking out on me a little bit here. But I was just consumed with drums. I was still practicing like crazy, and I had my friends and I had my little bands that would last for a little while, and then those people that I was playing with, they would run off to college. They'd leave the state, or they went to Boise State or what have you. And so I always found myself being the one guy who was really driven to do this, and I ended up auditioning and getting hired to work for a company out of Florida called Worldwide Showcase that put bands together and sent them on tour. So that was really cool. I ended up going to Tampa Bay, Florida, and doing that whole thing, and I was on tour, and that was my life, and it was like, this is what I worked so hard to achieve. And then that company that I worked for ended up folding after 7 or 8 months that I had been out there. Their business model started to not work like it had in the past. So, just totally out of my control. So I came home really dejected. I think I slept for 3 days straight. I was miserable. I was depressed and wondering, now what? Well, I got to put another band together. And again, I found myself being like the only guy driven really to really work at it, until through a chain of events happened. I ended up in Midline, and I'm not the original drummer for the band, but when I would go see the band, I ended up becoming friends with those guys, and they were the one thing happening in town that seemed like they really had it together, that they were really driven to do this thing. And so that really interested me, and away I went. And so it was like, yeah, it was a lot of hard work, but I never thought of it as like hard work. I just thought it was part of the process. I never looked at it anything different. I thought, I'm a drummer, I'm being a drummer, this is what I'm doing with my life. Well, as the years clicked by, it just felt like we couldn't break the ceiling on what we had done and what we were doing. And so, now I'm married and I've got kids, and still hanging around the guys who were like, we're gonna make it. That wasn't resonating with me anymore. I was a grown man. I had a wife. I had kids. Working really hard to support that situation. And so then I had to admit to myself it wasn't going to happen. It's not happening. And that was a really hard thing to face and to admit after all of that work. This one thing that I loved so deeply, that I believed in so much, just we weren't, it wasn't happening. I don't know how else to explain it. You start pointing your fingers and trying to assign blame. Well, the radio station won't play us, or the press isn't into us, or the record labels, they don't know what they're doing. Just all of these things. And I will say I felt like at that time we had tried everything there was to do. And of course, internet wasn't what it is now. The way communication happened back then was a lot different. You called from an actual phone that had a wire connected to the wall, your landline, things like that. And you were with Young American Showcase? Wow. Awesome. Pretty cool. Those were the Lyle years, if I remember correctly, Roddy. So I'm just going to assume you know Mike Jones. I'm going to assume that. That's pretty awesome, man. Yep, Clearwater, Florida. Yeah. Yeah, when I was there for camp, so Young American Showcase became Worldwide Showcase a couple years, I think, before I was involved. So, yeah, man, that's awesome. We are connected in some way. That's really cool. Okay, so back to my story. I had done all of these things, and had wife and kids and a mortgage, and I had a dad responsibility, a husband responsibility, financial commitments, and all of those kind of things. Not that you shouldn't have those, but that part of my life was growing more and more and more to where I couldn't just keep ignoring my family. I ignored my family long enough as it was, leaving town when Mary was super pregnant. She could have given birth to our first son at any time. I'm like, going on the road. You were there 88 to 90. I was there in 92 to 93. So we just barely missed each other. So that kind of brings me back to what I said at the beginning of this episode is so many men living their lives in quiet desperation. And I think I was part of that group for a long time. Like, I had just believed in this thing so wholeheartedly, given myself to that so fully, but running in parallel was a wife and kids and a mortgage. And it was like, I love my family and I don't want that to go away, but how I'm supporting that family, my thoughts on that had to change. And so at one point I thought, I'm completely done with music. And that lasted a very short amount of time before I had something else put together. So during this time of frustration, when I had a band going, whether it be Midline or I had another band called Cure for the Fall for a while, we'd be doing an opening spot for somebody or playing a really cool gig that that felt like such a release for me. Like this is what I want to do. Why can't I make that work? What is wrong? What is, I just didn't I couldn't find the answers to these questions I had. And so anytime I got on stage and I had my drums and I'm sitting behind my drums doing sound check, and then you go and sit up behind your drums to play a show, and the venue is packed full of people and they're enjoying what you're doing, that was my favorite thing. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like the office. Because guess what? I had an office. It was at home upstairs, this giant desk that I had where I would draw, because I started my own landscape company to support my family, and I'm drawing landscape design plans, and I'm putting estimates together, and I'm doing billing, and trying to decide how many employees I need, and I'm dealing with insurance, and I'm dealing with taxes, and all of this stuff was really overwhelming. But I felt trapped, that men living their lives in quiet desperation thing. And it was something I really, under my skin, hated, absolutely dreaded. It was not fun. On the outside, I'm driving around. I'm the owner of the company, and I've got employees and a couple trucks and equipment and things, and managing that. So from the outside perspective, it probably looks successful. And at moments it was. But it was miserable. I was miserable. And so when I would see one of my friends or another drummer, it didn't matter if they were local or out, and they would post a picture of their drums, I'm at the office tonight, it really depressed me. It was like, man, in my view, that's a place I want to be, is on stage. When I'm home in reality land and I'm upstairs sitting at my desk, my office, that was a miserable place to be. That was completely awful. And it was something I had to do because I had to take care of my family. And so those two things I did not associate with each other. I thought it was just sickening to see people post, this is my office. It's not your office. So so I made that post about a week and a half ago, like, here's an office, this is not the office. And then one of my friends said they thought the literal meaning of it was like, I'm cooler than you, like almost taking a stab at people who had their office jobs. Well, you've got your office job, but I got this really cool job, so this is my office. Okay, I could see that. I could see that maybe being the case, but I personally never felt that way. I never looked at it that way. And people claim their office is wherever they're doing business. Well, when I'm performing on stage, I'm not doing business. I'm reaping the results of all this hard work and dedication of years of things coming together to be able to do this. And so those two things never connected to me, and they still don't connect for me. And what had triggered that for me was another person who is back east, kind of in the Nashville area, had posted a picture, my office for tonight, and the picture was of this big stage and lighting rig for this big festival thing. And I'm like, man, that is a place that I want to be. Greg says, I think that my office tonight comments are ironic most of the time. Yeah, I'm not really sure, Greg. Could be. So I made that post, and this other person made that post about here's my office tonight. And then there was like a video swirling around for a while of Taylor Swift petting her cat, walking into a giant arena, and she's like, well, here I am back at the office. Like, you have achieved something that very few people ever will, Taylor Swift. And for you to casually say you're in your office, just, it rubbed me the wrong way. It really did. It was like, and then people go, well, Taylor Swift doesn't know what it's like to work and doesn't know this and that and the other. You don't know that. She worked very hard to be where she is. So I think, and she's very business smart. So I don't think that that's the case. She didn't have everything handed to her. Now she is at a point where she can have luxuries that many of us don't, but she's worked very hard to have those. So be cautionary, I think, in what you think she has or hasn't done. Like I said, I'd go play drums with her in a heartbeat. So then another drummer guy in town, just a couple days ago, posted a picture of his drums. And he says, "Here I am this is my office, or the view from my office," something along those lines. And I said, "No, come on, man, that's not the office. This is a happy place to be." And he responded pretty politely, but he said, "Well, he didn't say I didn't understand, but he just kind of laid out, you do all this work to put the gig together and to discuss when and where and what you're going to be compensated financially to do the show and all this work, and then you have to load up all your equipment and take it there and then unload it and set it up and then play the show for 3 hours, then pack everything back up and then drive home and unload all that and reset it back up." And he's like, "Yeah, so this all this hard work to be able to be in my office." And I was like, "Yeah, I 100% get that. I've done that thousands of times." Roddy says those tours are hard on everyone, including her. Yeah, there's your sleep schedule's totally mess. Anybody who's been on tour, like, for real, and Roddy is obviously one of those because he worked for Young American Showcase, and I know how that thing works. You're exhausted, and I had this discussion with Matt Starr like a couple months ago. We were talking about health and being on the road, and it's I said, I've got this broken leg, blah blah blah, but I'm not sick. I don't feel sick. And he said, when you have something to do and you're working on something, you don't tend to get sick. But a lot of people, when the end of the tour is happening, a lot of people end up getting sick at the end of a tour. It's because, like, your body just says, "Okay, I don't have to keep this pace up anymore. I'm going to shut down." And so that's what happens, is a lot of times when the end of a tour happens, people get sick. I even read so many times in Geddy Lee's book that he would be out on the road, he wouldn't have any health issues, and then the tour, and he'd be home and he'd be sick for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Couldn't talk or anything. Greg says every day on tour is like the movie Groundhog Day. A little bit. Lather, rinse, repeat kind of things. I think it depends on how busy your tour schedule is. Whenever Midline was touring, we always found something to do during the day. We weren't the guys that just stayed in the hotel all day long not doing anything. We wanted to go and hang out and do whatever. So at any rate, this guy that I mentioned said, "Well, we do all the stuff, load in, blah, 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 on and on and on and on." Cliff says sometimes the office has a good-looking co-worker. Maybe that's what they mean. I mean, you do get to look at the backside for 2 hours every time we play. Yes, I get to look at Cliff Miller's backside the entire time. And every once in a while, he'll look back at me with one of these, like, "Did you just play that?" And then we have a laugh. The producer says having an office space on tour, like on the bus or backstage, is still different. Yes, it is. While you might be getting paid to perform, it's a huge privilege to be able to perform on stage, even though you worked your butt off to get there. Having worked an office job for 13 years and hating it, I just can't equate the two. Yeah, exactly. There is always business to do, no matter what you're doing and where. But the stage is not that place to have your business. Yeah, with Midline, I was kind of the quote unquote tour manager. The guys in the band call me the dad of the band, the responsible one. Lots going on. And I watch Cliff Miller do that every time because he's the one that's running the show. And I'm there to help, man. I'm there to help and support and be part of the team. And If Cliff's dreams are coming true, guess who else's dreams are coming true? Mine. Exactly. So one hand washes the other, right? That's how that works. Okay, so and then this other drummer friend of mine said, like me of all people, so to speak, should understand that because of my level of experience and talent or whatever. Yeah, I 100% do understand what has to happen to make the gig happen, but I never view my drums as the office. Just stop it already. So I have all these feelings about that, right? And they're my feelings. I'm not trying to sell you. Yes, I am. I am trying to sell you on the idea of not doing that anymore. So I think so Drummers Education Connection had Todd Zuckerman on. If you don't know who Todd Zuckerman is, he is the drummer for the band Styx. Very well known, very well respected drummer, an amazing drummer. And Drummers Education had him on as a guest, I think maybe in July of this past summer. And I'm going to read you exactly what he said. So the interview's going along, and they're talking, and Todd Zuckerman just does like this quick little tour of his studio. Amazing studio. If you're a drummer and you saw his room, you'd be like, that's Disneyland. Speaking of Disneyland, so the drummer friend of mine who said, well, you practice really hard, you do all this work to negotiate your compensation and to the gig and the venue and loading in and loading out and blah, 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 and all those things associated with it. The first thing that popped in my head was, people take their families to Disneyland and they make a plan to go to Disneyland. They find out what it's going to cost to go to Disneyland. They work their butts off to be able to afford to go to Disneyland, or they work their butts off after they've gone to Disneyland because now they have a credit card to pay off or what have you. They do all this hard work to get to the top of the roller coaster. I would not be taking a picture at the top of the roller coaster and say, here I am in my office tonight. You would never do that. Why? Because it's not the office. You worked really hard to get there, to be doing what you're doing right now, to have this moment of this roller coaster ride that you've been looking forward to for however long. Don't diminish your hard work by saying, oh, here I am working. I'm in the office. Roddy says there's a reason we call it playing. Keep it that way or it's no fun. Yes, exactly. Can I like this while I'm on here? I think that I can. Let's try. I'm going to love it. I'm loving it. There we go. Yes. Good morning, Thomas. So, to quote Todd Zuckerman, so I have all these feelings about this, and then Todd Zuckerman, who I've never met, who is an incredible drummer. I really admire him for his abilities. He was showing off his studio, and in his studio he has a small little Gretsch or Slingerland drum kit. I can't remember what brand it is, but it's old. It had belonged to his dad. His dad was a drummer. And he was like thinking about his dad and all the work his dad went into to become a drummer. And there's this drum set that his dad played on. And, when you play drums, they vibrate. So like the molecular structure of the wood and all of that is vibrating. And vibrating from his dad. He said, this drum set over here has been on stage a lot of times. My dad did this, and he just believed that a lot of his spirit of his dad lives on in those drums because his dad made those drums play and sing and all of that, and it's just a really special thing to him. And because it was so special, he was talking about playing on live being special. And so I wrote down word for word what Todd Zuckerman said in this interview. So this is word for word what Todd Zuckerman said. It's a very sacred place. One thing that makes my skin crawl is when I see someone post on social media a picture of their drums and say, here I am at the office today. I really hate that. It's not an office. It's not clever. It's not cute. I do this so I don't have to have an office. This is a sacred place. Don't denigrate the time, the hours of soul searching and working, and the small triumphs. Don't call that the office. I find that just absolutely disgusting. This is my opinion. So that's what Todd Zuckerman said. So close to exactly what I've been thinking and feeling for so many years when I see people post, "This is my office." It just devalues what we've worked so hard to do. Don't devalue yourself. James says playing is work, working is play. The drumming life is the only way. I love that. And James, you said you were just listening because you're traveling. Keep your hands on the wheel, my friend. All right, so I mentioned this is going to work out really well time-wise, I think. Getting back to Geddy Lee's book, My Effin' Life. This book was really hard to set down. Now I'm not a guy that's enjoyed reading like ever until like the last 2 years for some reason. I had a student buy me Kenny Aronoff's book called Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll, and Kenny Aronoff is one of those people that I love his story, I love his passion, I love his drive, everything. So read his book, I thought it was great. Read Liberty DeVito's book, the drummer for Billy Joel. Great book. My guitar player JB from Midline sent me this. It was hard to put it down. Man, there's so much great information in there. I could go on and on. But let's see, Mary's weighing in. I have my office crap in the control room because there's no other place left in the house for my office space. And Scott even made a comment about ruining the vibe of the studio with office stuff. Yeah. And that's what the space we're dealing with right now. And that's, side note, that's why I feel like I want to make the studio bigger and we don't want to kill the vibe. Music is a place for inspiration. Music is and I think I said in the post, an exchange of energy and ideas with the people that you're playing music with. And when you got a stack of papers in the room that don't belong there, it's like clutter, right? Some people are way into knick-knack type things. I'm not a knick-knack kind of guy. When you think of knick-knacks, you think of an old person's home where they've got little figurines of everything everywhere, just taking up every space of flat surface possible. It's cluttered. It doesn't feel good to be in there. So yeah, Mary does have a lot of stuff in the control room because it's serving two purposes, and it feels good when it's clean. It feels good when it's clean because you feel like you can work easily. Roddy says, I was a recording engineer for many years and vibe was everything. Yeah, you want to have a conducive environment that's conducive to creating stuff, right? I've mentioned Matt Starr so many times, and he's a big part of why I have the life I have right now, because he was just so inspirational and so encouraging to everything that I do. So I owe a lot of thanks to that guy. Mary says, I'm just going to throw all the bills out. Yes. Yes, please do. Yeah, if they're not here, you don't have to worry about them. When Matt's doing his coaching stuff with his other clients that he has, and he comes across frequently somebody that wants to get into teaching drum lessons as a living. And so when that subject comes up, a lot of times he's had those people, he'll message me, he said, hey, I've got a client that wants to teach drum lessons, and he tells them, look, Fred's got this all figured out. You should talk to Fred. And so Matt will message me and say, hey, is it okay if I give so-and-so your number or whatever, and you talk to them about your drum lesson business? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, over the last couple of years, I've had quite a few of those phone calls, And I don't discourage anybody from running a business, but the more efficient that you can run a business, the better your business is going to do. So for me, having a dedicated space, and I got to put my leg back up, sorry. Ah. Having a dedicated space to teach drum lessons is important. If you're teaching drum lessons in your living room and the TV's there and the coffee table's there and there's magazines and your family's walking in and out of the kitchen and your family's trying to, that's distracting. So I have this room, it's all drums. It's all drums in here and drum books and sticks. Um, but I wanted a place where people walk in and they go, wow, this is fun. I love being here. This is really cool. And it's not distracting. There's nothing in here that's not music related. Um, so it's an inspiring place to be. I have rehearsals here and all of that. So having a good environment is really important. If you sit down in somebody's office and the bills are piled up, like Mary's saying, and stuff's not put away and it's cluttery, it's just kind of like cold. It's not a welcoming environment. So the environment that you're in really has a lot to do with what you're trying to accomplish. Thomas says, there's a big difference in doing something because you have to versus doing something because you want to and you love to do it. Yep. I want to love that comment. Loved. Okay. So this is going to tie in with today's topic, Geddy Lee's book. If you don't know the story of Rush, that's sad. But you should know the story of Rush. So in 1997, Rush was wrapping up their second leg of their tour for the Test for Echo record. And I believe it was kind of midsummer into summer. And, they all went their separate ways back to their home. And so Neil Peart went home to his house. And shortly thereafter, his daughter was killed in a car accident. I think she was 19 years old. And as you can imagine, that turned his life upside down. So Neil's daughter was killed in a car accident. And that, of course, was a life-changing event. And so, everybody trying to be supportive and respectful of his time and things like that. But one person who never recovered from that news was Neil's wife, Jackie. She just went spiraling into a deep hole of depression. And 10 months later, she passed away from cancer. But in Neil's book, Ghostwriter, which I read, and in Geddy Lee's book, they both said that, yes, technically she died of cancer, but most likely she died of a broken heart. So not only did Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush, lose his daughter, and then 10 months later his wife pass away, Neil himself was at a loss as a man and questioning his own life and all of these things. And of course, I think we could all understand, at least, maybe we can't relate, but at least understand that terrible position that he was in. And not to give away the whole book, or Neil's book for that matter, but he ran away. He got on his motorcycle and just left, and would occasionally send postcards to somebody in the band or their management team or whatever. And so he spent like the next 2 years trying to escape. But over the next two years, he started referring to himself as his new baby soul, and on and on. So you should read Ghostwriter. But through a chain of events, he met another woman in the LA area and eventually got married. And through that time, he spent several years not playing the drums at all, 2 or 3, I think, and started kind of playing a little bit here and there. And so feeling inspired to play music again, which was good news to Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, his bandmates. So there was all of this major life-changing events that happened for Neil, which in turn really affected the band because the band wasn't working. But they weren't going to bail on their drummer or continue on without him because he was so important to the band. It just wouldn't be Rush without Neil. So they let Neil come back on his terms. And so all of this led up to recording another record, eventually recording another record and going on tour, but being really restrictive on how many shows they were going to commit to doing because Neil had a new wife now and shortly after had another daughter, and he wanted to be there for them. So it was a very special thing. And then Geddy Lee's writing in his book, so after 5 years with Neil coming back from such a horrible tragedy, that they were playing their very first show again together after five years, and Geddy describes in pretty great detail that during the first song they were playing, that Geddy Lee walked to the center of the stage, and so did Alex Lifeson. So the three of them had met, or those two came together at Neil's Drum Riser, sharing this special moment of all of this tragedy and all of this grief and sorrow to come back to the one place that they found so much joy in, with being on stage and playing music together. And Geddy wrote, he said, of all the ups and downs of Rush, I always knew it was my job, but it never felt like work. And I thought that was pretty profound, especially considering the situation. And guess what? You've never seen any pictures of Rush or from Neil Peart posting on social media. Now, Neil's been gone since January of 2020. But prior to that, you never saw pictures of Neil's drums on stage. Here's my office tonight. Never once did you see that. So imagine how much work those guys do to do what they're doing and be where they are, and not say, well, this is part of the job. So I'm going to wrap up by this quote, and this really comes really super close to what James Harrison had just posted. But this is a quote from Mark Twain that says, "The work that is really a man's own work is play and not work at all." I'll say that again. It's a quote from Mark Twain, and he said, "The work that is really a man's own work is playing and not work at all." So that's really close to what James, let me reread your quote. I don't know if it's a quote or if it's a... James said, "Playing is work, working is playing. The drumming life is the only way." Okay, so that's kind of a very similar take on that. So, in short, now I got to move my leg again. I got myself in a weird position today, and getting my leg moving around as I'm dodging all these obstacles. Yeah. Being on stage, in my opinion, is not The Office. Being on stage and performing is a special place. It's an exciting place. Even those shows or gigs that come along where, they're maybe not ideal. They're maybe not ideal. What's the saying? A bad day of fishing is better than a good day at the office. Well, a bad gig is better than a day at the office. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate that. Yeah, this special place, this special environment, this place where you get to perform music with your friends and your bandmates and creating something. Or if you're a cover band, maybe you're recreating something. You're having fun nonetheless. And it's a special place to be. The Office is not a special place to be. The Office is a necessary place to be in order for things in your life to move forward. Roddy says being on stage is a privilege. Yes, I agree. It's I'll mention Matt Starr again. It's like there's so many musicians out there who they're looking to play their very first gig. I have students who a lot of times their first gigs are playing with their high school band at something, or their jazz band or marching band or whatever they're doing. Or you get people who start playing drums, in their early 20s or something. They get really excited, and now they're jamming with their friends and things like that. And they're going to play their first gig, and maybe their first gig is so and so's birthday party in the basement of a house, which I've done. That is a dream of theirs, to be able to do that. It's a special thing. It's a special occasion. It's this thing that they're working towards. It's this place they want to be, this thing they want to do. And then, you can look at working cover bands or something, and people who aren't in that might look at that group and think, man, if only I could do that, And I look at touring bands, national touring bands, and they're out there, and I'm like, that's my goal, is to do what that person's doing. So we're all looking at the next person up going, I want to do what they're doing. It's a very special place to be. It's sometimes hard to describe that feeling of being on stage in front of people and entertaining and enjoying that. It's really super cool. Am I the best drummer in the world? No. No. But I work hard to be able to do what I do, to have the skill set I do. Could I be better? Sure. But man, it's just like, it's such an awesome place to be. What did Mark say? Mark said the legend of Bagger Vance touches on the connection of play and a connection to God. Great read. I will have to check that out. And Mary said a great movie too. I know the movie part of it, but I've never watched it. Okay, I'm going to have to put that on my to-watch list. Or maybe better as the read. I don't know. Mark, have you read the book and seen the movie? I'd be interested. Okay. Well, I think I've shared my opinion pretty strongly today. Thanks for hanging out. I always appreciate that. And if you guys got something that you would like my thoughts on, or opinions on, or things to talk about, please drop them in the comments. I'm always looking for more material. For sure, going to have more guests as we go. And Mark says yes and yes. So he's read the book and seen the movie. Cool. And I've been separated from Mark for a while because of this broken leg situation. Rock on. Man, it's going to be great when we get to take the stage again together. See, that's a special thing. Mary says, bro, you've seen the movie. I think I've seen parts, but I haven't seen the whole thing. So I'll put that on my to-do list.